Everyone fell silent. How could this be? Balder is dead. How can this be? But nothing in creation can harm him. They all turned and looked in the direction the spear had come. They saw Hod, and they saw Loki, and they knew who had done it. Loki didn't stay long enough to find out how they would react. He turned and fled from the hall. The gods began to grieve for Balder's death. Frigg came from her hall when she heard the weeping and saw her son lying dead. "Do any of you wish to win my eternal love and favor?" she said. Everyone was so grief-stricken they didn't answer. So she said it again. "Do any of you wish to earn my eternal love and favor?" Hermod stepped up, a brother of Balder. "I will." Frigg looked at him and said, "Go, take the journey down to Hel. Bring Balder home." He left immediately. Odin himself went to the stable and took out his 8-legged steed, Sleipnir. Hermod mounted Sleipnir and began the 9-night-long journey down to Hel. The gods prepared for Balder's funeral. 4 of them lifted his body and carried it down to the shore. They took it down to Balder's own ship, Ringhorn. They placed his body on the center of the boat by the mast, and they built up wood to make a pyre around it. In their grief, they were so exhausted that they hadn't the strength to push the ship from the shore out onto the water to launch it. And so Odin called across the waters to the land of the giants, Jotunheim. He called a giantess down so that she could launch the ship. She came down, and her strength was so great that with one mighty push, the ship was sent down the rollers. It went so fast, the pine rollers burst into flames, and the flames from the rollers lit the ship on fire. Seeing her husband lying on his funeral pyre, Balder's wife Nanna died of a broken heart. Now it was not a funeral for one god, but for 2, and Nanna's body was placed beside her husband on the funeral pyre. Everyone was there. All of the gods and goddesses of Asgard, the rock giants, the frost giants, the dwarves, the elves, all the creatures that lived in all of the 9 worlds came for Balder's funeral. The pyre was lit, the ship was launched, and Nanna and Balder's spirits were sent on to Hel. Meanwhile, Hermod was slowly making his way north and down. After 9 nights, he came to the great river that separated the land of the living from the land of the dead. He crossed the bridge. There was a woman sitting on the other side, guarding. She looked up and said, "Who's there?" Hermod was silent. "Who's there?" she said. "There was an entire company of 5 men that came by just the other day, and they didn't make any noise at all, but there's only one of you, and I can hear you coming for miles. Who are you?" "I am Hermod," he said. "I am a god of Asgard, and I have come to speak to Hel." "Have you seen Balder? Has he passed this way?" "Yes," she said. "He is with Hel. He has passed this way." So Hermod continued until he came to the land of Hel. There was a great iron gate at the entrance. He would not be permitted to pass through the gates, for he was living yet. Only the dead could pass by. But Sleipnir, Odin's great steed, knew what to do. He backed up a piece and began to run, and with one mighty leap, he jumped the gates of Hel. It was not what Hermod expected. It was silent. None of the dead could speak to him unless he spoke to them first, and he kept his own counsel and did not talk. He found his way to Hel's hall, and there she was, seated on her throne, Balder sitting on one side, Nanna sitting on the other. He had heard stories of how hideous Hel was, but nothing had prepared him. From the waist up, she looked like any other woman. But from the waist down, She was a corpse, rotting and stinking, the flesh falling off of her bones. He presented himself, said that he came on behalf of all the gods of Asgard to plead for Baldr's life, to plead that he be returned, that he was the best and the brightest of all of them, and that all of the gods, that all of creation loved Baldr as they loved no other, that he must return back to the halls of Asgard. Hel looked at him and said, "Everything in creation loves Baldr?" "Yes," Hermod said, "everything." "I'm inclined to keep him here," Hel said, "but I suppose I can give you a chance. If he is as well loved as you say he is, then everything in creation will weep for his passing. Only if everything in creation weeps for the passing of Baldr will I allow him to return to the land of the living." Hermod left immediately. He took the message back to Asgard. Odin sent his Valkyries out to all the 9 worlds. They rode on their mighty horses, and everywhere they went, they cried out, "Baldr is dead! Weep for Baldr! Baldr is dead! Weep for Baldr!" And everything wept. The fire wept. Water wept. The iron and all kinds of metals wept. The air wept. The earth wept. All of the creatures on the surface of the earth wept. All of the creatures that swam in the sea wept. All of the creatures that flew through the air wept. And then the Valkyries rode to the land of men. "Baldr is dead! Weep for Baldr!" And all of the men stopped their work in the fields and in the smithies and wept. When the women heard, they stopped and wept. When the children heard, they stopped and wept. The Valkyries were satisfied. They had gone to all the 9 worlds, and every creature in existence had wept. They were returning back to Odin's hall when they came to a cave that they had missed. There was a giantess sitting in the cave. Her name was Thok. They approached her and said, "Baldr is dead. Weep for Baldr." Thok looked at them and said, "I have no love for Baldr, either living or dead. I'll weep no tears at his funeral. Let Hel keep what Hel has. I will never weep for Baldr." The Valkyries returned and told Odin of their failure. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that that giantess, Thok, was in fact Loki. And so, not everything in creation wept for Baldr, and he remained in Hel. And darkness began to descend upon the world. It was the beginning of the end of all things.